Family disowned me for marrying below my class. Now my wife's startup is worth $50 million and they want back in. Growing up in Connecticut, my family always made it clear that appearances mattered more than anything else. My parents owned a sprawling estate with perfectly manicured gardens, hosted charity galas where everyone wore $1,000 dresses, and sent me to private schools where my classmates' parents were senators and CEOs. Everything had to look perfect from the outside, even if it was crumbling on the inside. When I was 24, I met her at a coffee shop downtown. She was working behind the counter, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, flour dusting her apron from the pastries she'd been making since 4 in the morning. She had this incredible laugh that made everyone in the shop turn around and smile. We started talking about books, then music, then life in general. Before I knew it, I was staying until closing time every single day just to walk her to her car. My family's reaction was immediate and brutal when I finally brought her home for dinner 6 months later. My mother barely spoke to her the entire evening, asking pointed questions about her background and education with that fake smile she reserved for people she considered beneath us. My father spent the whole night checking his phone and making comments about how important it was to marry within your social circle. My older brother just sat there smirking like he was watching some kind of entertaining disaster unfold. The real explosion came a few weeks later when I announced we were getting engaged. My mother actually threw her wine glass against the wall and screamed about how I was throwing my life away on some nobody from the wrong side of town. My father threatened to cut me off completely if I went through with it. They couldn't understand how I could choose love over legacy, passion over position. To them, marriage was a business transaction, not a partnership between two people who genuinely cared about each other. The wedding was small and beautiful, held in a little church across town with just our closest friends. My family didn't show up, not a single one of them. I kept checking the door during the ceremony, hoping maybe they'd change their minds at the last minute. But the seats I'd reserved for them stayed empty. My wife squeezed my hand tighter every time I glanced back, understanding exactly what I was feeling without me having to say a word. Those first few years of marriage were tough financially but incredible emotionally. We lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment above a bakery, and the smell of fresh bread would wake us up every morning. My wife worked double shifts at the coffee shop while going to community college at night, studying business and computer science. I picked up freelance work wherever I could find it, writing articles for local magazines and helping small businesses with their marketing. We ate a lot of pasta and learned to find joy in the smallest things. Sunday morning crossword puzzles, walks through the park, movie nights on our ancient laptop. My wife had always been fascinated by technology, especially how it could help small businesses compete with bigger companies. She'd spend hours after work sketching out ideas for apps and websites, dreaming about ways to make things easier for people like the coffee shop owner who'd given her a chance when no one else would. I watched her fill notebook after notebook with business plans and coding tutorials, teaching herself programming languages from library books because we couldn't afford online courses. The first sign that things were about to change came when she won a local business plan competition. Her idea was simple but brilliant, a platform that would help small food businesses manage their inventory, orders, and customer relationships all in one place. The prize was $5,000 and access to a business incubator program. I'll never forget the look on her face when they announced her name as the winner. Pure joy mixed with this fierce determination that I'd seen glimpses of but never fully understood until that moment. Date 1. 6 months later, everything started moving incredibly fast. The incubator program connected my wife with mentors who helped her refine her business model and introduced her to potential investors. She was working 18-hour days, coding until her eyes were bloodshot, testing features with local restaurant owners, and pitching to anyone who would listen. I became her unofficial cheerleader, making sure she ate actual meals and occasionally forced her to take breaks to walk around the block. The breakthrough came when a regional restaurant chain agreed to pilot her platform. Within 3 months, they'd reduced their food waste by 30% and increased their profit margins significantly. Word spread quickly through the industry, and suddenly everyone wanted to know about this revolutionary software that was helping restaurants operate more efficiently. My wife hired her first employee, then 5 more, then 20. I started getting weird calls around this time. Distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to catch up. Family friends would bump into me at the grocery store and mention how they'd always thought my wife seemed lovely. Even my brother called once, making small talk about the weather before awkwardly asking if the rumors about my wife's company were true. I kept these conversations brief and didn't mention anything to my wife. She was stressed enough with the rapid growth of her business without dealing with my family's sudden interest. The real test came when a major tech company offered to buy her platform for $15 million. We spent weeks discussing it, weighing the pros and cons while walking through our neighborhood at night. The money would set us up for life, but my wife had bigger dreams. She wanted to build something lasting, something that would really change how small businesses operated. Against everyone's advice, she turned down the offer and decided to raise another round of funding instead. That decision seemed crazy at the time, but it turned out to be the smartest thing she ever did. The next 18 months were a whirlwind of product development, strategic partnerships, and explosive growth. Her platform expanded beyond restaurants to retail stores, service businesses, and eventually any small company that needed help managing their operations. The team grew to over 200 employees, and they moved into a gorgeous office space downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a rooftop garden. My role evolved too. I'd always been good with words and communication, so I naturally fell into handling public relations and partnerships for the company. Working alongside my wife every day deepened our relationship in ways I never expected. We were building something meaningful together, and the shared purpose made every challenge feel manageable. The media attention started slowly, with a few articles in trade publications about innovative software solutions. Then a major business magazine featured my wife on their cover as one of the top entrepreneurs to watch. The photo showed her in our office, surrounded by whiteboards covered in product roadmaps and growth charts, looking confident and visionary. I kept multiple copies of that magazine hidden around our apartment because I was so proud of her. Update 2. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning while we were having breakfast in our new house. We'd finally been able to afford a real home with a backyard and space for an office. My wife was reviewing investor presentations on her laptop while eating cereal, and I was reading the news on my tablet when my mother's number flashed across my phone screen. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken in over 4 years, not since she'd sent a single text message saying the family had made their position clear, and I should respect their decision. But something made me pick up. Maybe curiosity or maybe hope that time had softened her heart. Her voice was different than I remembered, less imperious and more uncertain. She said she'd been following the news about my wife's company and wanted to congratulate us on our success. The conversation felt surreal, like talking to a stranger who happened to know personal details about my life. She asked careful questions about our business, our house, our plans for the future. I answered briefly, not giving away too much information but not hanging up either. The real purpose of her call became clear when she mentioned that the family would love to reconnect. Maybe have us over for dinner to celebrate our achievements. She talked about how proud they were, how they'd always known I would find success in my own way, how they'd missed having me in their lives. Every word felt calculated, like she'd practiced this speech multiple times before dialing my number. I told her I'd think about it and hung up feeling completely drained. My wife could tell something was wrong immediately. When I explained what had happened, her reaction surprised me. Instead of anger or hurt, she seemed almost amused by the transparent attempt to reconnect now that we were financially successful. She pointed out that these were the same people who couldn't be bothered to attend our wedding or acknowledge our existence for years. More calls followed over the next few weeks. My father left voicemails about how much he regretted the misunderstanding and how family should stick together through everything. My brother sent text messages about wanting to introduce his kids to their aunt, conveniently forgetting that he'd refused to acknowledge her existence before. Even extended family members started reaching out, cousins and aunts who'd always followed my parents' lead in ostracizing us. The final straw came when my mother showed up at our office unannounced. She'd somehow gotten past building security and was waiting in our reception area when I arrived Monday morning. She looked older than I remembered, more fragile, but she was dressed impeccably as always in a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She started talking immediately about family loyalty and second chances, about how successful people needed to surround themselves with the right kind of support system. She mentioned several business opportunities that my father's connections could provide, partnerships with established companies that could take my wife's platform to the next level. Everything was couched in terms of mutual benefit, but the underlying message was clear. Let us back into your life and we'll help make you even richer. My wife handled the situation with incredible grace. She listened politely to my mother's pitch, asked a few pointed questions about the proposed partnerships, and then explained that we already had more opportunities than we could handle. She thanked my mother for thinking of us but made it clear that we were perfectly capable of managing our own business relationships. After my mother left, we sat in our office looking out at the city skyline and talking about what had just happened. My wife pointed out something I hadn't fully realized. My family's interest wasn't really about reconnecting with me as a person. They saw dollar signs and wanted access to our success. If we'd stayed struggling in that tiny apartment, I would never have heard from them again. That realization was both liberating and heartbreaking. I'd spent years hoping they would eventually come around, that they'd realize their mistake and want me back in their lives because they missed me. Learning that their change of heart was purely financial felt like grieving the family I'd thought I had all over again. The business continued growing at an incredible pace. My wife's platform was now being used by over 50,000 small businesses across the country, and she'd started getting invitations to speak at major industry conferences. A documentary crew approached us about featuring her story in a film about innovative entrepreneurs. The valuation of the company hit $30 million, then $40, then kept climbing. With success came new challenges. We had to learn how to manage a large team, navigate complex legal issues, and make strategic decisions that affected hundreds of employees and thousands of customers. My wife handled the pressure beautifully, but I could see how much it was taking out of her. She'd wake up in the middle of the night with new ideas or sudden worries about potential problems. The most difficult part was maintaining our relationship while building a business together. We had to establish clear boundaries between work and personal time, which was harder than it sounds when you're passionate about the same project. We started taking weekly walks without phones or laptops, just to remember why we fell in love in the first place. Final update. The moment that changed everything happened at an industry award ceremony where my wife was being honored as Entrepreneur of the Year. The event was held at a fancy hotel downtown, with hundreds of business leaders and investors in attendance. My wife looked stunning in a navy blue dress we'd picked out together, and I was so proud watching her accept the award and give a speech about the importance of supporting small businesses. What I didn't expect was to see my entire family sitting at a table near the back of the room. They must have bought tickets when they saw the event announcement, hoping to be part of our big moment. My mother was wearing a fixed smile and applauding enthusiastically. My father was recording everything on his phone, and my brother was schmoozing with other attendees like he belonged there. The sight of them hit me like a physical blow. Here they were, trying to insert themselves into our success story after years of absence. They wanted to be in the photos, to tell people about their successful daughter-in-law, to benefit from reflected glory without having earned the right to share in our happiness. My wife noticed them too and squeezed my hand under the table. After the ceremony, they approached us with huge smiles and open arms, acting like the past 4 years had never happened. My mother started talking about how proud the family was, how they'd always believed in us, how wonderful it was to see dreams come true. But here's the plot twist that nobody saw coming, including me. While my family was busy trying to reconnect with us for financial reasons, I'd been secretly working on something else entirely. Remember all those freelance writing jobs I'd taken on during our early married years? Well, one of them had been ghostwriting a novel for someone else, and I'd fallen in love with the process. Over the past 2 years, while my wife was building her empire, I'd been writing my own book during early morning hours before work. It was a novel about family, class, and finding your own path in life, basically a fictionalized version of our story. I'd submitted it to publishers under a pen name, not wanting to leverage my wife's success or deal with potential conflicts of interest. 3 weeks after the awards ceremony, I got a call from a major publishing house. They wanted to buy my novel and were offering a significant advance, plus they were interested in a multi-book deal. The editor said it was one of the most authentic and emotionally resonant stories about modern family dynamics she'd read in years. I told my wife first, obviously, and she was more excited than I'd ever seen her about anything work-related. She immediately started talking about how we could support each other's separate careers while still collaborating on projects that mattered to both of us. Her enthusiasm reminded me why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. Her ability to genuinely celebrate other people's successes without jealousy or competition. When news of the book deal broke, along with announcement that my wife's company had just been valued at $50 million, my family's reaction was predictably intense. Suddenly, everyone wanted to have lunch, to catch up properly, to discuss family business opportunities. My mother called daily with ideas for how we could all work together, how the family's connections could help with book promotion and business expansion. The breaking point came when my father suggested we should consider bringing him on as a business advisor for my wife's company. He'd prepared an entire presentation about his experience and connections, completely ignoring the fact that we'd built everything without him and had no need for his involvement now. The entitlement was breathtaking. He genuinely believed we owed him a piece of our success simply because we were related. That's when my wife did something that completely shocked everyone, including me. She organized a family dinner at an expensive restaurant and invited my parents and brother to join us. I thought she was going to try to reconcile, maybe find some middle ground that would allow for limited contact. Instead, she stood up halfway through dinner and delivered the most articulate, devastating speech I've ever heard. She thanked them for showing their true character so clearly over the years. She pointed out that real family members celebrate your happiness during the good times and support you during the difficult ones, not disappear when you need them most and reappear when you achieve success. She told them that we'd built our lives and our business based on authentic relationships with people who cared about us as individuals, not as sources of financial benefit. She explained that their absence during our wedding and early struggles had actually been a gift, because it taught us to rely on ourselves and choose our own family from people who truly loved us. Then came the part that left everyone speechless. My wife announced that we were establishing a foundation to support young entrepreneurs from working-class backgrounds, providing them with the mentorship and funding opportunities that traditional networks often exclude them from. We were committing $10 million from our success to help other people overcome the same barriers we'd faced. She looked directly at my parents and said that we hoped they would understand this was our way of honoring the values they'd inadvertently taught us. That worth isn't determined by social status or family connections, but by how you treat people and what you contribute to the world. The dinner ended in complete silence. My family sat there realizing that not only were we not going to welcome them back into our lives, but we were actively working to help other people who'd been dismissed and underestimated the way we had been. Walking back to our car that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. The question of whether to reconnect with my family had been weighing on me for months, and my wife had found the perfect way to answer it. We weren't going to be cruel or vindictive, but we also weren't going to pretend that money could erase years of rejection and conditional love. 6 months later, our foundation had helped launch 15 new businesses and my novel had become a bestseller. We bought a house with enough space for the family we're planning to start, complete with a home office where my wife can work on her next startup idea and a writing studio where I can work on my second book. Sometimes I drive past my family's estate and feel a twinge of sadness for the relationships that could have been. But mostly I feel grateful for the lesson they taught me about authentic love and chosen family. My wife and I built something beautiful together, not despite their rejection but because of what it taught us about what really matters. The people who show up when you have nothing are the ones who deserve to celebrate with you when you have everything. Everyone else is just along for the ride. And frankly, we don't have room in our car for passengers who weren't willing to walk with us when the journey was difficult. We're planning our 5-year anniversary celebration next month, and it's going to be perfect. Just us, the friends who've supported us from the beginning, and the mentors who believed in us when nobody else would. That's what real family looks like, and we wouldn't trade it for all the social connections and family money in the world.